The Medium was quite possibly one of my most anticipated games, along with the new Amnesia Rebirth and Cyberpunk 2077, hardy har har, since its announcement in mid-2020, and no, I don't consider the 2012 announcement as the one to go by. Now that the game has been released and I have had the time to finish it, it's time to subjectively judge whether it was any good. Was it worth the wait? And who does it really cater towards? Greetings ladies and gentlemen, this is Kalistophilus, and in today's video we shall take a dip into the spiritual world of the Medium. So grab a cup of hot coffee, tea, chai, or whatever makes you happy and settle in. The Medium is described as a psychological horror game developed by the Bluebird team, which was released for Microsoft Windows and the new Xbox series of consoles on January 28, 2021. Why this game immediately drew my attention was because I had really enjoyed Bluebird team's Layers of Fear in the past, and the Split Realities gameplay twist looked like if they managed to pull it off, it was gonna be amazing. Unfortunately though, as it seems to be with a lot of titles recently, the game itself ultimately did not live up to its hype. At least that's what I think. But let's talk about the good, the bad and the ugly found in the Medium. And before we even get to the game mechanics, I wish to clarify something regarding some of the marketing for this game. Personally, I don't think that it's a psychological horror game. The fact that you create a game in a spiritualist or a medium context, add dark rooms to it with some demonic monsters, doesn't make this into a psychological horror game. I would even go as far to question whether this should even be categorized as a horror game, because the horror genre, by definition, intends to frighten, scare, or disgust the consumer of the medium that it is presented upon, and there simply isn't much of anything of sorts here to be found, besides a few jump scares. Simply put, at no point did I feel any tension throughout the whole gameplay. Maybe I'm blatantly wrong here, or maybe I'm just more numb to this stuff than others, so feel free to argue with me in the comments below. But I don't think that Doom was a horror game either. Alas, let's focus more on the game itself now. You play as Marianne, a spirit medium with an orphan past who helps troubled souls seek final respite and who has had the same disturbing dream of a girl being shot on the pier for as long as she can remember. After the death of her foster father, she receives an eerie call asking her to visit an old Polish workers' resort called Niwa, and she decides to investigate the matter after the person on the other end of the call informs her that he is aware of her disturbing dream loop. The whole story is essentially about exploring Niwa, its past, inhabitants, and Marianne's connection to all of them. I will not touch on the story any further in order to keep it spoiler-free, so there is no need to be afraid of spoilers in this video. But I will say this, the story itself is good, very good in my opinion. It has some mysteries to solve and it comes together quite nicely in the end, but it's the journey there that suffers a bit. The game itself is not classified as a walking simulator, but at times it sure feels like one. When you're exploring, there is a lot of emptiness to the scenes. I acknowledge that they are essentially exploring an abandoned resort, but what I mean is that there are so many doors which you simply cannot interact with, and the overall experience is very, very linear. At the other end of the spectrum, there is always a ton of crap lying around in the scenes, but none of it can be interacted with. This might sound like a ridiculous complaint, but in the end, when you consider the huge amount of running around in this game, it really started feeling like a walking simulator on steroids in the end.
This is Steroid Guntarski speaking.
To clarify this statement, let's talk about your interactions with the game. Most of the time, you will simply be walking around, reading notes left behind by Niwa's inhabitants and solving puzzles, which could be considered an insult to the word puzzles. The main mechanic of this game is the Split Realities feature, where you can interact with objects and beings in both the real and the spiritual world. For the presentation and the story of the game, this is amazing. The way that Marianne can talk to spirits and you can see both realities at the same time is simply brilliant. But in reality, as a gameplay mechanic, it falls flat. What you will mostly do in the spirit world, gameplay-wise, is find an energy source and then use it to charge up an electronic breaker or create a spirit shield for Marianne to pass through a cloud of moths who don't even follow her around. I have heard many reviewers discuss this spirit shield mechanic as being a great tension-bringing mechanic, as it won't last forever and you will really need to hurry up so that Marianne wouldn't get killed, or that when you detach its spirit Marianne from the real one's body, that it too will dissolve when being far away from the host for too long. No, that is all bullshit, as there is no real tension behind these mechanics. For the occasions that you do get to use the spirit shield to hold off the moths for Marianne, you get ample time with the shield, and I never was anywhere near running out of time on my very first run. What's also sad is that those moths really just fly always into one spot and don't really move around at all. So all the tension of being hunted down by a murder of moths is instantly lost when you see this in action. And regarding the out-of-body experiences, you can always just call the spirit back with a single button press. So all the tension that there could have been with going away from the host body and wondering whether you would make it back in time is immediately lost as well. But what's probably the worst part about all this is that there are just not enough dangerous sections in this game. Majority of the game is just about solving the mystery, which is fine, and I love a good story. But this game has so much more potential with the split realities mechanic, which is just wasted. There is no combat in this game, which again is fine, though there are a few moments in the game where you have to use slight puzzle elements to damage or kill off a few spirits here and there. Using puzzles for combating beat-backed spirit monsters is an excellent idea, and in theory should bring attention to the player, as they will have no means of actually defending themselves should something go wrong. That opportunity is wasted here as well. There are multiple encounters in this game with such big bad evil creatures, where during their introductory cutscenes you start feeling like, okay, here it comes, let's quickly try to figure out what should I do or where should I run or whatever. Only to find out that you will not have a combat encounter after all once the cutscenes end and Marianne automatically deals with the threats on her own.
Oh, he's gone. Who does that cabbage think he is?
Now, we touched a bit on the puzzles beforehand, and let's do so again. They are enjoyable, but very easy. You get your ordinary fetch item X to be used on item Y kind of fetch quests, and luckily there are some more interesting ones thrown into the mix as well, where for an example, there are a few where if you alter something in the real world, something else in the spirit world also changes and allows you to progress. Too bad that there aren't really that many puzzles of that kind in the game, and the variety tends to lack a bit. Generally speaking, what is there fits the scene, but again, feels kind of lacking from the gameplay's perspective. That's kind of the whole story with the medium. It's a good story to get through if you are someone who likes a good mystery story with spiritualism and maybe some sprinkles of horror. The real issue with the game is the gameplay, where there is so much untapped potential left on the table. It could have been so much more enjoyable as a game if some modifications would have been made to the mechanics, but as for now, the story alone carries the whole experience. Currently, the medium goes for 49.99 euros, and I completed the game in 7 hours, with all the clues and notebook entries, etc. found as far as I know. For that price, I would definitely not recommend getting this game. Wait for a deep sale. If you're really interested in playing through this mystery story, or if you really want to simply know what happens and how it unfolds, you could easily just watch a playthrough of it online. Anyways, time to wrap this one up. I hope you've gained some insight into this game thanks to my utterly subjective opinion on the matter, and I wish you all the best, and may you have a lovely rest of your day. Whenever, wherever you are. Bye bye.